Welcome to the podcast in the CRE Vault with Mike and Marc. All right, welcome back to In the CRE Vault with Mike and Marc. How you doing, Marc?
I am doing excellent, Mikey. How about you?
I'm hoping for a win this Saturday.
Well, I'm hoping.
There's been a lot of foreplay with these black shirts.
And it just keeps going, and it's a nonstop deal, but we're getting used to it, right? You adjust and acclimate, and that's how you go.
Optimism.
That is optimism.
Which in this business, we have a lot of optimism.
Eternal optimism is a lost residual now. So listen, I'm really excited about our guest today. And I think just as a reminder, NAI FMA, we're the largest commercial brokerage in Lincoln here. And so we're kind of the industry leader here locally. But we always seem to forget now, Mikey, we're on the leasing side of this whole building. And we do have some the better sides of the company are the maintenance and the management side. And as much as we don't want to admit that, it is very true.
It's the stable piece.
They keep us going.
It keeps the gears greased.
Otherwise, we're just nobody, right?
We're down in front of the Rococo with our shirt off in the suntan.
We are, and we're eating Snickers bar for breakfast, and it's just not good.
Nope, Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yes, there we go. So, anyways, why don't you introduce our guest today? Because I'm really excited to have him on.
Me too. This is Shawn Herzog. He is vice president of facilities and maintenance, and he is. I got to tell you, he was with us, and he'll go deeper into this, but he was a member of the tribe, so to speak. And then he went off to do some different things. And then we got him back. And that was I was pumped to hear you're coming back. That was so awesome.
Thanks. It's great to be back. So a little bit about me. I started at FMA in 1989. Actually, I graduated from Milford in 1987. And then FMA took over the management of where we were taking stuff at the Sharp building a long time ago. And was with FMA, kind of moved through the ranks from 89 to 2004, ended at contract coordinator. In, I think, 2004, I left and got into the controls business. So building automation on that side of it from, 2004 till 2022 when Drew asked me to come back. So Scott Baum was retiring and they asked me to come back and, never burn a bridge. So kind of come back and it's great. Great people here. A lot of new people, a lot of older people, but older. I remember working with Mike when he's probably 18, 19. So
we wore the green pants.
Yeah, had the green pants.
Those things did not breathe.
They did not. And the tan shirts and everything on that end of it. And that was a long time ago.
That was, I think you gave me one of my first jobs, and it was resealing and recaulking the roof at Green Tree Court. And I think it was you and Baum, and I had to remove about 50 dead pigeons from up there.
Yeah, that's crazy. The pigeons are bad. Yeah, the pigeons are bad stuff. So we've had, downtown and pigeons is bad too. So
but we go way back, but super glad to have you back here. But
you guys are painting a picture of a Chippendale show gone wrong with the whole green pants.
Green pants and sunburns.
Mesh shirt.
I don't know if I need that visual of Mike in the Chippendales green pants of the FMA.
We could do an FMA calendar.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
We're going to get canceled.
Let's think about it.
We'll get back on task.
Shawn, talk about, so when you started with the company, were you just general population? I mean, were you out there changing filters, or unwrap that a little bit?
Yeah. So that's where I started. So that was HVAC. That's kind of where I started in Milford, and went from changing filters on everything, servicing all the equipment, all the PMs on everything going forward. Started at the Sharp building. Kind of moved out of there, went into Meridian Park. We've had Meridian Park forever, which is great. Then kind of moved into some apartment complex stuff too, doing that. Just the day-to-day maintenance on anything and everything. So then kind of moved into the contract coordination portion of it. We had When Your Dad, National Research Corporation, and Lincoln Community Foundation were doing some big projects. So we were doing some owner's rep stuff there. So I kind of got involved in both those two major construction projects at that time and worked on that. So got out of the green pants at that point. So I was in regular slacks at that point and blue jeans. So
that's a good feeling.
Which was nice.
That's awesome.
So, but I will say we've upgraded our uniforms since then. So we've kind of switched to some nice black.
We got into present day materials.
Yes.
We'll say that.
So talk about say general job duties now compared to then. Not so much with just job title shift. I mean, you're doing something totally different now than you were back then. But talk about what your job duties today were different from back then, and just with the time span and everything, all the changes.
So a lot of stuff back then was all pneumatics. So everything was ran off pneumatics. So most of the commercial buildings back then were all pneumatics. So you needed to know how a pneumatic thermostat ran, how everything ran on that, ran that building, how it ran the equipment like that. Now it's getting to more of the IT side of things. Everything's going digital controls on everything. The old time maintenance is not there anymore. You have to be very good at working on the computer, knowing what's going on the computer. Your buildings are just so intelligent anymore. You know everything that's going on in your buildings. You can figure out the temperatures. You can figure out how your equipment's running. You can look at all that stuff and see that better than what you ever could back then.
So it would be comparable to say, let's say, a 1980s Chevy Blazer to a new Audi, right? Everything's so computerized now. You almost have to understand the computer side before you understand the mechanical side. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have the knowledge on the mechanical side of it, on how things work. But if you can't run a meter, you can't troubleshoot on a computer. You can't. It's hard to do this business anymore. And there's some older buildings, some of the older stuff you can still do, but the newer stuff, you really need to be well versed on the computer to be able to operate that stuff.
That's interesting. And so you can, as opposed to, let's just pick on any building, you'd have to maybe go down to the mechanical boiler room, say 10, 15 years ago versus now. You could almost analyze it from your desk.
Correct. There's a lot of the stuff. I was in the controls business when I left here in 2004. I got into the controls business until I came back, and that's what it was. Everything on the control side was you could remotely troubleshoot stuff. You could pull the nice thing about the new equipment. It pretty much self-diagnoses itself, but somebody's got to look at it, and you still need to know how to fix it once that happens. It gets difficult to do that sometimes. Just if you don't have the right tools. You don't have the right troubleshooting equipment, the diagnostic equipment. It's hard to do some of that stuff. So it gets more expensive because you got to have more meters. You got to have more stuff that you have to have, or you have to rely on a contractor to do that.
That's interesting.
So talk about, to take another step forward, talk about, one of the benefits of management. So I own a property. I own a high rise downtown. I don't, but let's say I did. And I'm thinking, well, do I want to do my own maintenance? Because I think I can change my own air filters and do that on a daily basis. What's the benefit to having just your crew every day looking over my building?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's having the eyes on it. It's having the knowledge of the facility, of the mechanical equipment, plumbing systems, electrical systems, security systems, all that type of stuff. Just having that knowledge and the overall benefit. You get training because things change so quickly in the industry. Everything changes rapidly. The advancements with the computers, the advancements with everything. Changing filters, that's easy. I mean, that's the easy stuff. You can do that on that side of it if you want to do that yourself. But it's checking the rest of the equipment when you're changing those filters, checking the blowers, checking the codes on the computer in the unit that it may not have shut down, but it'll still tell you that, hey, there's a code that we need to check this piece of equipment. So you can check that at the same time when you're doing everything on that side of it. So really a good plus.
That's great.
We're a downtown group, so we're in office every day early and leaving. And every time I leave, I always see an FMA employee just walking around, and I adore that value that of we have a maintenance guy just walking around, seeing things. I mean, if there's a broken window, it's everything's realized right away, and I think that's a big pro to our company.
Benefit.
Yeah, and I think with the property managers and the maintenance staff working hand in hand together on going through that stuff and seeing it, the property managers will see it. What I've stressed to the guys: if you see something, say something. I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but if you see something, say something that, hey, this needs to be fixed. We've got like you said, a cracked window here or something like this. Don't just, so many times people will just walk by and just ignore it. And it's just like, hey, we need to address this. We need to do the proper thing for our owners. We want to make sure that this building is a Class A building, if it is, or whatever class it is, just to make sure, just in general, take pride in your buildings. And I think that's what our staff really does. I think everybody does.
I think so too.
Well, yeah, I mean,
and it shows.
You see a ceiling tile that's wet, and I mean, you might not see that for 2-3 months if you don't have good management.
Yeah.
Good maintenance. I mean, it's just
there's a pipe up there that's been leaking forever. Then and we miss things too. Everything gets missed sometimes, but it's just having those eyes on it, and it's just like, okay, now you got a drippy ceiling tile, and it's been dripping for a few months. Now you have a mold issue. Now you have some environmental stuff you have to deal with on that side of it. So just staying on that.
Group that's trained to look for that stuff too, just by second nature, almost is nice.
Yeah, it's occupational hazard. My son's in the fire sprinkler industry. He's been in it for a few years now, and it's interesting because we go out and he looks up at the ceiling. That's just occupational hazard. That's one thing that you do. You just, hey, that sprinkler head's in the wrong spot. This isn't this and that. And HVAC is the same way. You're looking at the diffusers. You're looking at, hey, there's no mold or anything on the side of the diffusers, because you get that stuff on there. So just occupational hazards.
Yeah, it never ends.
No, for sure.
Well, I think that's and to segue into my next question, talk about preventative maintenance versus reactionary maintenance and the benefits of either, and more than anything, just talk about what both are.
Yeah. So preventative maintenance is huge. With the cost of everything that's went up. So HVAC, I'll pick on HVAC, but there's a lot of preventative maintenance stuff. But HVAC, the cost in HVAC stuff's probably went up 30 to 50% in the last 3 years. So everything that we're seeing, new equipment, you're getting new stuff on that end of it. If your equipment's not maintained and you're doing not preventative maintenance, it just gets a piece of equipment that should last 20 years may last 10. So, and you're saying a rooftop that costs $25,000 maybe cost $14,000 a few years ago. Now it costs 20 to 25.
Wow.
It's just ridiculous on the price stuff. And now if you're putting that back on the owner that says, okay, we didn't maintain this piece of equipment like we should have, and now you're replacing it way sooner than you should have to, which is a big deal. So reactive maintenance is just, there's so many people that just do reactive. So it's just like, hey, my piece of equipment broke down. Okay, now I need to fix it. Now I need to call a contractor. When I don't have anybody looking at that piece of equipment, it's maybe it wouldn't have broke down. Maybe a belt was loose, and then all of a sudden the belt frayed and broke completely. Now you're down without any HVAC. You don't have any cooling. You don't have any heating. Whatever it is, hey, now we need to get there quick. Now it affects your business, right? Now it affects how you're operating your business. We can't operate a business if you don't have heating and cooling when it's 0 degrees outside or 100 degrees outside. So
that's a good point.
It's hard to do that.
I think about a refrigerator built in the 80s. Some of those fridges still work. And, there's always that saying they don't build them like they used to. And I think that's a fair statement. And so my question is, on you were bringing up the HVAC and a rooftop unit. Is the quality build even, as typically when you see the escalations of 30 to 50%, price hikes on things, a lot of times companies will offset that percentage hike by quality. Do you understand my question?
I do, but I don't necessarily agree with. I mean, they'll say that, but I think that the industry, what I've seen, you're talking 80s, you're talking there's stuff running in a few of these buildings down here that were put in the 20s. That's still running.
Wow.
So it's crazy to see. I think the industry got to the point where it's planned obsolescence or planned failure, because you can't create new business if your equipment is built so good it doesn't fail.
It's like the iPhones that come out every year.
Yeah.
It's right. If we sell it one time and we make it so good we only have to sell it one time, then our business model is not reoccurring revenue. We're not making any money back on that stuff. We can't do that. So what I've seen lately, especially since COVID has hit, unfortunately, it seems like the quality of the equipment, I don't know if it's a manpower issue or what, but the quality of the equipment coming out isn't as good as it was probably 5-10 years ago.
Really?
Yeah. I think just physical, I think the smarts, the smarts that run stuff, I think they've improved on that stuff. And I think it's just a QC issue. I think it's a quality control issue coming from the factories. And it's not limited to one or two manufacturers. We've seen it quite a few different places that, hey, new equipment that's came in and it's just like, how did this ever get out of the plant? On that side of it with some QC. So
that's interesting.
But the smarts on the equipment, everything's built in. So if you have a building that's got complete energy management systems built into them, you pull that equipment in, I can troubleshoot that. We've got lead place across the road. We can look at all that equipment and tell me exactly what the pressures are on the refrigerant, what the errors are coming back in on the codes, and everything on that end of it. We can troubleshoot that stuff remotely. We get remote alarms. So if that equipment fails, talking about predictive, hey, we get that. We get the alarms on the energy management systems before they're calling and saying, hey, it's hot in here, it's cold in here, whatever it is. We know, we've looked at it, we've got the problems. A tech's en route to take care of it before we know we have problems. Before the tenants know we have problems.
That's really cool.
Huh.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Well, that's amazing.
It is amazing.
What would be the largest item that any owner should look at when it comes on the preventative maintenance side? What is the one that is the if you don't repair it and you don't pay attention to it, it's going to cost you the most? And I would say maybe HVAC, elevators, roof. Give us the one that, hey, I've ignored this thing for 20 years and it's I gotta.
What's the kiss of death that could?
I gotta sell the house just to fix this.
You bring up a good point, and I don't know that you can pinpoint one of those three that you brought up. I mean, because they're all huge, right? So elevators, I guess you can look at elevators maybe down on the list a little bit, because every elevator pretty much has to have a service contract on it. So they have the state requires inspections, and the state requires that stuff. So elevators are they're still technology issues, but they will take care of themselves for the most part. Software still, it's just like anything, like a Windows 98 computer. I mean, all that stuff goes away. And a lot of these old elevator systems are running on that type of stuff. So that type of software. So it's software upgrades that need to happen. But the true one, in my opinion, is chillers. If you got big buildings, chillers in buildings and cooling towers in buildings, if you're not maintaining that stuff, multiple problems. Stuff fouls up, efficiencies go down. Doesn't work very well. If you're not doing a good chemical treatment on your cooling towers, if you got cooling towers in there, you risk Legionella. So you have Legionnaire's disease, which is a big deal. So water systems that are cooling towers and stuff on the big buildings downtown, that's a big deal. So you need to maintain that stuff. And those pieces of equipment are $750,000 to $500,000 that you're paying a bunch of money on that stuff if you need to replace that stuff, if it's not maintained. That's huge. Cooling towers are a big deal if chemical treatment is huge. So on that side of it, you got to have a good chemical program if you got a system that's got water in it.
Huh.
I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
And that seems like it could be like exponential, and you touched on like an illness that could cause. I mean, think of the
yeah.
Like the trickle effect of like everyone in my building sick.
Yeah. So
what? That's like a bad movie.
So I just heard that, I mean, there's a case of Legionella, I think that's just came up in Las Vegas a few weeks ago. That I think it was one of the Caesars properties, and it might have been Caesars Palace actually. But somebody got Legionella, that a guest at the hotel got Legionella, and they're tracing it back to the cooling tower because it didn't have good chemical treatment on the cooling tower.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I bet they're going to get a free buffet out of that.
Shawn, I feel like you're making it up, but I believe you. I believe you.
They got the crab legs going.
There's the internet. You can track that stuff down on the internet. Believe everything you hear on the internet, right?
It is all true.
That's spooky. I'm not feeling too well.
Yeah.
Hey, but you're in one of our buildings. You should be
That's
good.
true. I feel refreshed now.
So we get the emails of new hires, and we've seen some new hires come through in the past year or two. So and I think that's heavy on growth and just bringing in new people to cover and more than anything just to train, right? I mean, you're trying to bring in the younger workforce to help with, now and in the future. Talk about employment changes that you've seen just in the industry, say, since you started. I mean, what's the employment like now versus then? Not so much work ethic, but you can touch on that because I always have feelings on that. But, run through that.
It's hard to find good people. And it's to the point you can't. Because the market is so tight, nobody wants to get into the trades. You got very few people working in the trades anymore, which I consider our guys are all trades guys. They're not a full plumber, they're not a full electrician, but they're still in the trades. They're still turning the wrenches. They're still doing the stuff on that end of it. It's hard to find people that want to work, and so you have to pay them. So you have to paying more. And what I've told my kids, I told that the trades is the place to be, because at some point somebody has to work on it. So something's going to break down. Somebody's got to work on it. And at some point, if it's supply and demand, right? If there's nobody there to do the work, then the prices just go up and the wages go up. And so I think we're paying our guys pretty well. So I think it changes on that side of it. So I know that there were some pretty good adjustments on that stuff before I got back, because I know Scott Baum, and they were having problems trying to find anybody. I've got a job out there open on Indeed. It's been open for about 3 weeks, and I've had 3 people look at it, and they're not qualified people. So it's the point where I think if you find a good person, our last hire, he was in the fire sprinkler industry. He doesn't have, he's just general maintenance. He understands that side of it, but a great hire. And it's, we've invested in a training program. So we're going to work on the training side of it and get these guys trained. So I think if you find good people, it's train them. It's getting them trained rather than you try to go find the old maintenance guy that did it for 50 years. He's really good on the pneumatic side, but we've talked earlier about the electronic side, the other stuff. It's hard to find some of that stuff.
Yeah,
so
it's like a new wave.
Yeah. So it's challenging. And I think you touched on the work ethic. It's just, I think it's what I've seen is it's pay me. And I don't have to prove myself. And to me, and I think working through the company, and not to toot my own horn a little bit, but working through the company, I saw that early in my career, that it's just like, go out and do your job and prove yourself, and people will notice, and you'll advance accordingly based on that. And there was a guy that worked here at the time, probably senior to me. He definitely was senior to me, but it was just like felt he was owed promotions. And it's just like, that's not the case. You have to earn it. And like I said, I've got some really, really good guys on this crew. So great group of guys. And I'm excited to move forward with those guys.
When you're looking to hire a new employee, is there a line item on their resume that red flags you, as in that this guy's perfect? So, and let me carry that further. If it was a plumber versus an HVAC tech, is there something that is a perfect scenario for you?
That's an interesting question, and it's just like until recently, I probably looked at it a little bit different. One thing that I've starting to notice a little bit more is the job hoppers. Now, the technical ability, I think I can get a good feel of that through an interview process and through everything like that. Everybody can put anything on paper you want. But what I've seen lately is the job hopping stuff. You look at a resume and it's just like, okay, I was here for 6 months. I was here for a year. And that's a red flag to me on that side of it.
Well, that's huge, because we don't want to spend a bunch of time and energy, training a tech, and then all of a sudden he takes all of the knowledge and then jumps across the street, so to speak.
Right.
And that's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, it used to be the point where there were wanting to change jobs for a 25 cents an hour raise. I mean, and it was just job hopping based on wages. And I think, to me, there's more to a job than pay.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that the younger generation just looks at it as at the dollar side of it. They're looking at, hey, I'm making this. It's just like, well, are you worth that?
Yeah.
I think just a good understanding about everything is perfect for an employee, for you, in the fact of he's buried into a unit, a rooftop unit, and he doesn't know what this is. He's smart enough to try to figure it out himself instead of calling you. And I just think, you're looking for those employees that are not so much self-taught, just willing to figure something out.
Take initiative.
Right.
Yes. And I think that's kind of what you're looking for.
The guys that's working on his own car at home, his 80s car, because it's hard to, you can work on the newer stuff, but it's harder to work on the newer stuff for sure on cars. Mm-hmm. But changing his own brakes, doing his own stuff, just and I don't know that we have too many of them, but when I was in the controls business, one thing we really looked at when we were hiring guys is the old farm kids. I mean, because the farm kids are the kids that have the hey, I'm not an 8 to 5 guy or a 9 to 3 guy or whatever it is. It's just like the work ethic is there. If I need to be there till the job's done, I'm there till the job's done. It's just like some of the stuff is, hey, I'm working my 8 hours a day. And I think I've talked to a couple of my contractors kind of the same way. And the mentality anymore is, well, I'm making a really good wage. Why do I have to work overtime? And it's just like, well, in our industry, in mechanical industry and maintenance industry, it's you work till you get the job done. You can't, hey, I've got a water line broke over here. Well, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going home.
Right. Next thing you know, you got an ice rink out in the front.
Yeah. And like I said, I got really good guys on that side of it, but
I go back to the farming way of life. You're out in the middle of a field and your tractor breaks down. You just don't walk away from the tractor and walk home and done. You fix the tractor until it comes home, and it doesn't matter if it's midnight or not. You just stay there until it. So I respect that. I respect that. Before we pull off of this, and we'll go to the next set, but you were talking about your kids. If you were to tell your kids a decent trade to go into, and you're going to send them off to Milford, and you said, hey, I want you to go learn a trade. You pick 2 of these 3 trades. What trade would you recommend? HVAC, electrical, plumbing? I mean, what would be your go-to?
HVAC and plumbing would tie together, so they'd be the same. Ultimately, if you can get into the trade, the elevator trade is the trade to be into. If you're an elevator mechanic, you're doing pretty good. Mechanical's the same way. Like I said, my kid's a sprinkler fitter, and he likes that. He doesn't mind turning the wrenches. He's making he's 2-3 years into it after getting out of the Marines, but it's okay. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. HVAC is another one. The union's been pushing really hard on stuff, so getting on that side of it. But HVAC electrical, there's not enough of those guys to go around.
Okay.
Every contractor's looking for somebody on all those trades. So everything's looking for people to do work. So
I think back to, what trade, if something breaks down in my house, what trade do I call the least? And that's an electrician. Because how many times, you get GFI plug goes bad or something, I can't imagine they get called. Like a plumber, you can figure you're going to show up to that house every year and you're going to put in a new water heater. So right. I think you're looking for that residual.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. But I think on the commercial side of it, I think it's the other way around. I think the electrical is huge. With the data centers, the Facebooks, the Googles, the other stuff. So I've heard recently that this, the new Google that's going in is just if you wanted electrical work done, you're going to be in trouble because all the electricians. I think when Facebook was going on up in Omaha, I think they had 2,000 to 2,500 electricians on site at any given time. And it's just like, there's not that many guys out there. And Lincoln's just smaller. We've got the union contractors to do the stuff, but there's just not a lot of guys into it. So
it's wild.
Yeah. So they said when it gets full blown out there that it's going to be, because they pay over scale. So they're paying more than what everything else is to get them in there to get the work done. And so they pull them away from all these other contractors. So it'll be interesting when that gets in full swing.
And they're going to pave 2 parking stalls.
Yeah, that's it.
Wonderful.
I love it.
Wonderful. Love the economy.
Yeah.
Talk about talk about, so we got Class A buildings, which are the upper echelon of the buildings, and then down to Class C and Class D. I think we might have a couple Class Fs hanging around here, Mikey. There's a few. But, talk about maintenance on those two. What's the difference between the two? One, Class A is probably a little more computerized, does one have more preventative than the other? And unwrap that.
Yeah, no, definitely Class A has more preventative. I mean, we have a full program we have it on all our buildings, but it's just more in depth on a Class A building than what you have on the other stuff, the computer stuff, the other stuff. And the other challenge is some of the owners don't want to pay for people to be on site doing stuff.
True.
So it's just like, hey, it's better for me to just do breakdown maintenance. So that's all I'm doing is if it breaks down, then we'll call somebody to take care of it.
Get what you pay for kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think the tenants require in the Class A stuff, they have an expectation of what we're going to do. And I think we definitely have to maintain that stuff. And it's just, especially for the owners, it's just like, hey, I don't want to go to an owner and say, hey, this piece of equipment we put in 10 years ago and now it's failed because we didn't do our job. We didn't do the right preventative maintenance on that and have to replace that another $250,000 piece of equipment. So, and on the commercial side of it, you guys see it probably more than me on the Class C stuff than the other stuff, but it's, hey, we don't want to pay any money to do anything. So, and we hear that a little bit, that it's just like, hey, we don't have the money to pay, so we don't want you guys there. So it's hard to do that. And then when it breaks down, and it's hard to explain to people, is just like, hey, that piece of equipment would last way longer. It's more efficient. It's going to help on your utility bills if we're cleaning the condensing coils on this equipment. If you're not cleaning condensing coils in Nebraska with cottonwood, you're in trouble, right? So it's going to burn. It's going to clog up. It's going to burn out a compressor, condenser fans. Everything's going to burn up. So, so that maintenance stuff needs to happen. That doesn't happen until there's a problem a lot of the time on the lower class stuff.
And I think one of the heavy items on the preventative side is just the happiness of the tenant. Oh, right. Huge. I mean, I understand the cost of that, but what's the tenant loss worth to a landlord? And in a previous podcast, we were talking about everybody was transitioning from Class C to Class B to Class A. And like you said, the Class A's probably take a little bit more time because you're always preventative. But I think the tenants are 3 times happier. And I think about, if a light bulb goes out in my office, I mean, it annoys me all morning that the light bulb is out in my office.
Or it's flickering and like you're getting interrogated by a cop.
Yeah, and that's all you think about. But I can't imagine if an elevator went out or if it's the HVAC's going out. I mean, that would be horrible.
Yeah.
And it shows it with kind of the rents.
Yes.
Right? A versus C.
And you guys probably see this more than me, but when I was, forever ago, when I was in maintenance the first time, one of the things that always popped out to me is how much changeover was happening based on HVAC. I mean, my HVAC is not working well. I've been unhappy with it ever since I moved in. There's a problem with it. You guys probably see that. This is the biggest complaint. We're moving out because of this. And that, I think that still happens. And I think the part with the automated stuff, you can see that stuff. You can predict that stuff. You can figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
On that side of it.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, this was a wonderful recap.
Huge.
I mean, just to recap, and I learned just a ton about what you see on your side of the fence. And I appreciate you coming in, Shawn.
Yeah.
I appreciate you, what you do here too, because quite frankly, when Marc and I and the rest of the team are working on, renewals and keeping tenants in place, what you do with your team helps us by leaps and bounds, I think.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we don't necessarily think about that.
Well, I think even as we break up the leasing, the management, and the maintenance, we're kind of a stay in your lane kind of people, just internally as the office. Now we all kind of know each other, but maybe we just don't know each other's line as much. And I don't know if we need to, but it's just nice to hear everything.
Yeah. No, I think this stuff is good to do that, to make you guys aware of what we do and make us aware of what you guys do. I think one thing when I started back here that we didn't have a good plan in place I wanted to know what properties you guys took care of, what one you guys had, what ones the property managers took care of. So everything was kind of compartmentalized. Hey, you guys had this. Property management had this, maintenance had this. We've created a list, at least, hey, I know that Marc takes care of this property, Mike takes care of this property on the sales and leasing side. So then you guys could look at it and say, hey, I got some questions on a lease. You could pull that up and look at it and say, okay, hey, I know that Chris takes care of this property. I can call Chris and say, hey, ask me about that, or everything on that side of it. So I think there's always roundabout ways to get to stuff, but just try to streamline stuff. Everybody's so busy the way it is to try to streamline things and make the process better.
And when everything is internalized on the maintenance management and leasing side, as we were doing the podcast, I was thinking about the buildings that the building owners have us do all three, and they're really the top end buildings, even in Lincoln. And I think it's because of the communication, and it's an easy conversation as you're walking by. Hey, I saw this today. I just think it's an easy conversation. So
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and we're all a team, right? So we're the whole team, and everybody's got eyes on stuff. So, like I'll go back to see something, say something. You guys are going to say something. Somebody else is going to say something if there's something going on in the buildings. And the three different teams looking at that. That's great.
Yeah,
big team mentality.
Big team mentality. Well, thank you, Shawn, for giving us a little bit of your time and recapping everything. It's just we're huge journey people. We like to hear about what people have been through and what they've seen, and how they got to where they are today.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, Shawn. Yep. Have a great day, bud.
Thanks. You too.
The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of NAI FMA Realty. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only. NAI FMA Realty disclaims any liability or responsibility for any individual's use or reliance on the information presented in this podcast.